Okay, so today I'm going to give you some notes. This once again should be review, but we're just going to brush over some of the basic terms. So the first one that I want to give you is atom. It's the smallest particle that can have the characteristics of it. It can have the properties. Uh, so an atom is usually represented by just a little dot, or we're going to draw it out later on, and I'll show you all the different parts, but it's the smallest particle with characteristics. Okay, so you've probably seen the little drawings of atoms before that show like the Jimmy Neutron symbol. And it's basically showing the nucleus and it's showing the electrons around it. Okay, so the nucleus is in the center. That's where most of the mass is. And it has the protons, where protons have a positive charge, and neutrons in it. Neutrons have a neutral charge, no charge. So these two together make something called the mass number, because that's where most of the mass is. And we'll get into that later when we're talking about isotopes. But just know that most of the mass is in the nucleus, and the mass number is just the number of protons and neutrons added together. Those are the electrons are on the outside in a cloud. So they're just kind of bouncing all over the place, making a little cloud around the nucleus. We do have something that we call orbitals, which are just areas where we think the electrons are. I'll get that to focus better. Okay, so orbitals are just areas where electrons are located. And you will never see me write out electrons again. I'm always going to do an E negative. Okay, next term I want to go over is an element. That's going to be two or more of the same atoms combined, bonded. Okay, so if we showed an atom as one dot, an element would be a lot of the same dots bonded together. So an element is anything from the periodic table. Anything from the periodic table is an element. It's not one single atom, it's a bunch of stuff bonded together. So just a bunch of the same atoms bonded together. Elements also have the characteristics, and they are from the periodic table. Just remember, anything on the periodic table is an element. Elements are a pure substance, so it doesn't have anything else mixed in with it. Okay, the next thing I want to go over is a compound. So a compound is going to be two or more different elements bonded. So remember I showed you that the atom is like one little dot. If we are drawing a compound, an element was a bunch of the same atoms bonded together. Compound is going to be two or more different atoms, elements bonded together. So this would be like water. Water is a compound. So you've got two hydrogen and an oxygen bonded together. Compounds are a pure substance. So like you can have pure water where it's just water molecules together. Just because you have different stuff bonded, it doesn't mean that it's not pure. It just means that they've chemically bonded and they've made a new substance. Okay, so those are some basic terms. Other basic terms that I want to go over with you are physical properties, and changes. So physical properties are like observable characteristics. Changes, it does not change into a new substance. So it's going to stay whatever it is. It just kind of changes the form of it. So physical properties would be like the taste, the smell, smell, the feel of it. Color can be a physical property, but we're going to put a star by it because it can also mean a chemical change. It's not always that way, but it can be. Alright, physical changes would be like if you tear paper. If you tear paper, it's still paper. It just has a different form. This is another one that a lot of people really get confused on, but if you dissolve in water, so let's say we dissolve salt, which is NaCl, and water, which is H2O, it's just changing the form of the salt. It's not changing it into a new substance. So it is salt water, but you can get the salt back out and you can get the water separated from it. If you heat it, then the water's going to evaporate off and it'll leave the salt behind. So dissolving something in water is actually just a physical change. Another one would be any phase change. So if you go from a solid to a liquid to a gas, if we think about water, solid water is ice cube, then we got liquid water, and then the gas is the vapor. It's all still water. Okay, so it's just changing its phase. It's not actually changing the substance. Okay, the next ones are chemical properties and changes. Okay, chemical properties allow it to change. So that would be like it has the ability to rust or spoil or the ability to burn, like it's can burn. Okay. Physical changes would be like what I just said. Something rusting is a chemical change. So rust is just where iron combines with oxygen and it forms iron oxide. Spoiling, like spoiling milk, is a chemical change. You cannot get the milk back out of it once it spoils. So just think about it like that. Physical changes just change the form of it. It's still the substance it was. It just changed how it was shaped or something. Chemical changes, you can't get it back. So that would be like something rusting. It's eventually going to rust away and there's not going to be any metal there. Spooling milk, burning stuff. Like if you burn paper, then it's not paper anymore. It changed into a different substance. Okay, so that is it for those. So we went over, let me review over this a little bit, some basic chemistry terms. You probably learned them in physical science. Atom, the smallest particle with characteristics. It's got a nucleus, that's the center. That's where protons and neutrons are. It's where most of the mass is. Most of the atom is empty space. You've just got that little dense nucleus, and then you got electrons flying around on the outside in an electron cloud. We do have orbitals where we think they're located, so we kind of know the general area of electrons, but they're still in a cloud around it. Elements are two or more of the same atoms combined. It's anything from the periodic table. That's why it's called the periodic table of elements. It is a pure substance. Compound is two or more different elements bonded, and it is a pure substance as well. That would be like where two hydrogens and oxygen form water. And then we went over physical properties and changes. Physical properties are observable, so it's like taste, feel, smell. Physical changes does not change it into a new substance, it just changes the form. So it's tearing paper, dissolving something, or a phase change, going from a solid liquid to a gas. Chemical properties chemical properties allow it to change into a new substance. Chemical changes are where it's changing into a new substance. So a property would be the ability for it to rust. So that's iron. We know that iron can rust. We know that milk can spoil. We know that some things are combustible. They burn easier than other things. So that's a chemical property. Chemical change is actually when it's doing it. So rusting, spooling, burning are your most common examples of that.